Hello and welcome to the Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series, powered by citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org, and as well in partnership with fashionabc.org. Once again, we are coming to discuss how we can actually change the world and actually can look at the tools of our times, the fourth industrial revolution, all the areas of digital transformation to improve business, sales, technology, iteration and implementation as well. I would say taking it to society, and how we can actually improve the relationships that we have between us, which is always a challenge and an opportunity, but is always part of what makes humanity so special. So today I welcome to our series Tim Hughes, and that is the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite and a global social selling pioneer. So I know Tim digital for a long time, but it's actually the first time I'm actually on a podcast with him. So Tim is a leading global best-selling author and creator. He's as well one of the top digital influencers and the content expert and sales global authority. He's been using the social media networks and all the digital tools to contributing in terms of the creator economy, in terms of big corporations, how to improve and use these techniques, especially how to do social and digital selling, which I think is more important than ever, but it's still something that is not discussed enough unless you go to some very topic areas. And as well, especially the areas of how to take digital marketing, leadership, and management into this. He's a best-selling author, and he co-authored Social Selling, the Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, which is actually right now in the second edition. We're going to be talking about that, as well as Smarketing, how to achieve competitive advantage through blend sales and marketing, both published by Kogan Page. And he's been working with a lot of big corporations, I think some of them including Fujitsu, Sisao, eVector, and DSP Global. But his most important role from a corporate perspective was in Oracle as UK Business Development Director. And this position at Oracle brought large-scale sales transformation and the results in increasing more than $100 million in sales uplift to the company. He as well has become an associate in the past to iCloud to merge the benefits of social media changes and the consequences changes that brings to business. And as well, DLA Ignite comes out of that as a consultancy company that is looking at organizations and supporting organizations and businesses leverage marketing strategies, sales through social media, leading, and as well different strategies in terms of trends and business, and where he works as a CEO. He's as well a guest lecturer and a lecturer in social selling and digital media in the executive education program at the Rutgers Business School in the Greater New York City area, and the Power MBA, where he has created a new model for the sales program. And as well, he ranks #1 in Analytica as one of the most influential people in the world in terms of social selling. And you can go for a while, but I think this highlights a bit of Tim. So welcome to our series, Tim.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for that introduction. I'd forgotten about all of that.
No, there's more. So Tim, I think as I mentioned in terms of your bio, you actually been doing a lot of things. So from a strategical level consulting to actually executing, of course, working in an organization like Oracle is not an easy task. And as well, bringing sales at the level that you discuss is even bigger. So let's start by a bit of your personal background. And as well, you are as well an academic as an author. So how did you start looking at sales, looking at digital? And of course, you and me have been on this for some decades, so it's interesting as well to see the difference, because of course for young people they grew up on the internet, but we grew up pre-internet and they saw it growing, and now it seems like, and now we're going to the metaverse. So a bit of that history of yours and some highlights that you might want to bring to the table.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. My background is one, I'm a salesperson, and I've been in sales now for 25 years. Sales as in business to business, so B2B, enterprise, selling large ticket enterprise deals. So the largest deal I've ever done is probably about $30 million. Working from small companies up to big companies, but always working within the B2B enterprise space. 11 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I saw that there was a change taking place. And it was actually my manager at the time that said, you need to get on social media. And it was like, well, do I really? And so I joined Twitter, and I actually got 1,000 followers within actually a couple of weeks. It didn't seem to be difficult to get followers. I invested a lot of time in social media and just using it and trying to find out what it was about. What I'd seen certainly in my earlier life was the fact that people had basically technology is an ever advancing, or will always advance. And if you don't keep up with it, you fall behind. And I'd seen people fall behind. And what I wanted to do was make sure that I always kept up. I always tell this story, which quite often makes digital natives laugh, which is that I remember getting my first laptop. It was a 386 laptop. And we had AMI Pro as a word processor, and we had Lotus 123 as a spreadsheet. And we had those because the people in IT said that Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word will never take off. And anyway, the sales team there, 25% of the sales team immediately pretty much resigned over the next 6 months. And they said, well, we don't do typing. We're salespeople. We go out and we have meetings with people. We don't type. And we had a secretary. She was fired because we did our own typing. And they said, we don't do that. And it was like that was like there was a technology inflection point where there was a change in the technology, and we had to change the way we work. And that's exactly what's happened, it's what's happened now in terms of social media. Social media has changed the world. It's changed the way that we do business, and it's changed the way that society runs. 6 years ago, I formed a company called DLA Ignite with my business partner, Adam Gray. Adam has a marketing background, my background being sales, and we come together and we have different views, but it comes together quite nicely. And we realized that there was this gap in the marketplace, that people weren't taking social media strategically. Even today, we thought we had about an 18-month window before everybody worked this out. And here we are, this is now our 7th year. And what we see, if you go onto LinkedIn, you see people being tactical. Here's a picture of me at a conference. Okay, interesting, but so what? So when we talk about strategic, what we do as a company is we help organizations create leads and meetings from their activity on social media, which ultimately generates revenue. And I wrote my first book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, which was the first edition. It came out in 2016. I've had people reading that said it's the first book that I've ever realized that there was a connection between social media and actually generating revenue. And I think that's partly because the way that I approached writing that book was that I wanted to show that that social media wasn't just about, you can use it to meet with friends. You can use it as a way of connecting with your grandchildren in Australia or whatever. But this is a way that people can systematically, by doing a process, what they can do is they can actually use it as a way of connecting with people, having conversations, because in B2B enterprise, we have to have a conversation. To sell something, we need a conversation. And then that actually leads to commercial interaction or closing something. So it's about, I always think it's about bringing the experiences I had in B2B sales, bringing my experiences that I had within social media and playing around with that, and bringing that together. And that's why I wrote the book and was inspired to write the book, the first one, back in 2016.
Wow, that's impressive. So let me ask one personal part. So I think, at least from my personal experience, there are people that are born with the capacity to sell something. And which is not my case, but for instance, my father is like that. In my case, I had to learn how to sell. So let's start by this, because I think this is an important thing. At the end of the day, any business, the first task, I tell that to my team, the first task is to make money and do sales. But if I look at my team, 90% of people cannot do a sale. So let's ask, mostly from your, let's say, childhood teenage years, when was the time that you understood that sales was in your blood and it was something that you wanted to do? Because I think that's the key element for everyone, especially that people that are in business.
I certainly don't think I was born a salesperson. I'm an introvert. If I do a Myers-Briggs, I always come out as an introvert. But I quite often feel that that's a strength rather than a weakness. Quite often people think that sales is about talking, and it's not. Sales is actually about listening. Sales is actually about connecting with people, forming a relationship, building up trust. My background has always been new business sales. I don't like account management and looking after clients that we've had. For me, it's about going out. Traditionally, it used to be about, we used to say it's about kicking down doors and building trust immediately. And I certainly see social as a way of enabling people to do that, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. What we're doing when we go out on social media, and was it now, there was some research that came out yesterday that 40% of Gen Z and millennials now use social media as their main place for search rather than Google. And there's some research that came out from IDC and SAP just last week, which says that 67% of buyers now use social media as a way of going onto social media to get information. That what we're able to do is that we're able to build relationships fast when we're on social. And one of the things that we'll talk about today are the 3 things that we need to do to actually be good on social, because our position on social media is in effect a shop window to the world. If we take LinkedIn, for example, there's 850 million people on LinkedIn. They walk past your LinkedIn profile every day. And when they do, and they look in your shop window, what do they see? Do they go, that person looks desperately boring? Or do they say, that person looks interesting? I think they can solve these business problems I have. I'm going to ask them. And for someone to actually step forward and walk forward and say, can you solve my business problem, is a big step, because we don't like salespeople. We avoid them. The internet is a fantastic place to keep away from them. And the whole point of websites is that you don't actually have to talk to anybody anymore. But the thing is that as we know, quite often in what we sell, we have to have a conversation. And so what happens is that your average buyer puts up with talking to a salesman because it's kind of part of the job. It's what we have to do. So how can we make it that the salespeople are seen differently from the buyer? And that's one of the things that we've worked on over the last 6 years. My background is in electronic engineering. I didn't do business at school or anything like that. I've in effect self-taught myself in everything that I've done. I was very lucky, and I would recommend it to anybody that my first graduate role was at it was actually at what was a UK computer company, ICL, which is now Fujitsu. And they put us through an awful lot of training in terms of how to give presentations, how to read a set of annual accounts, all of these things that I certainly didn't learn when I was playing with soldering irons at doing electronic engineering. And it was only at that time when I started working for ICL, when I actually saw salespeople and what they did, that I said, can I work with some salespeople and see what it's like? And then I worked with some people, and I actually worked with a new business team in Birmingham, ICL. And it was then that I actually said, I actually think I can do this. This is because normally it was like, well, this means doing presentations, which when I was 14, standing up in front of 250 people, if you said to me at 14, you're going to be standing up in 250 people giving presentations, I would have not believed you. And I quite often ring up my mother and say, I've just spoken in front of 250 people, and she'll say, oh yeah, you were that little shy boy at 14, and you wouldn't have, you hid away from people when they used to come around and stuff like that. And it's not something that I say would come naturally, but I guess it's something that I've grown and I've learned, and I've learned to love.
That's quite impressive, and I think for everyone listening to us, it's an important thing to understand that everyone can learn these techniques, and I think especially in business, this is more important than ever. So let's look at your book, because your book is quite cutting edge and is still very relevant. And now there's a second edition. So the book talks about the digital landscape, how it changes buyers' habits, and incredible difficult how to reach them. And we all know that. And especially, like you said, it's about relationships. For instance, in my case, 99% of my business is coming from relationships. But one of the things that you talk is about 5 pillars of selling. You talk about as well how to use networks purposely to build social trust and create high quality community, how to develop real influence and authority, and how to scale the social selling across an organization, including maturity and investment models, risk and governance, and technology platforms. So if you could just summarize, of course, I think it's a book that everyone should read and should get involved, because this is more important than ever. And I think, like you said, if 60%, I would say the 90% of the you mentioned 60% of sales are influenced by social, but it's going to be 100%. There's no doubt. And of course, even our experience right now, we go to a shop and you have a phone checking the price, checking the experience. We're going to ratify. We might even go to 5 websites before we do the experience. So these 2 things are right now, we cannot stop it. And of course, this is not just in advanced markets, it's all over the planet. So I would like to see how the book is relevant, and then the second edition, if you want to highlight, and summary. Of course, the idea is for people to read the book, but touching a bit on that.
Okay, so the first edition of the book was written back in 2015, and it was published in 2016. And really, at the time, I was taking what was in my head and putting it down on paper. I'd been involved in a rollout of social selling. It was pretty rudimentary if we looked at it today, in terms of there was about 4,000 people across Oracle, across Europe. A lot of that was, looking up people before you went to meetings and stuff like that. But I took what was in my head and put it down. And that the first edition has sold over 6,000 copies. For a business book, 2,000 is a bestseller. And it was still selling. And of course, during COVID, it sold even more because people were stuck at home and are going, I need to sell over social. What am I going to do? And then Kogan Page approached me and said, can we do a second edition? So let's park the second edition for the moment and talk about the first edition. The way that we went about it was that whenever Matt and I brainstormed every chapter, and whenever we brainstormed a chapter, we'd get we'd chalk up what we were going to do, and I'd actually been in a meeting on the morning of the first brainstorming session, where my sales VP leant across the desk, and I'm going to take out the words beginning with F that he basically shared with me, and he said, "This social selling is all very well, but where are the leads?" And what Matt said, that's an ideal mantra that we use for the book, which is what we want to do is make sure the book isn't fluffy about fluffy things about social media. This is going to be a workbook. This is going to be a book that's going to help salespeople. And I even today, I know people that carry it around with them in their cases, and they've highlighted things and stuck stickers on, stuff like that. And they say they use it every day, and they reach out and they look at stuff, and that for me was what it was about. It was about creating something that was not about how to use LinkedIn, not about my journey, not about personal brand, but something that salespeople can actually hold and actually use day in, day out. We now talk about, we've now matured more in the way that we talk about social, because as a business, we've been doing this now this is our 7th year. And we talk about people being able to walk digital corridors and have digital conversations. So if you think about the way that we now work in a physical world and we work in a digital world. So for example, 1 minute we're feeding the cat, which is the physical world, and the next minute we're on LinkedIn and we're in the digital world. And in that digital world, we have a digital identity. It's who we are. And that digital identity is where we have this, I talked earlier about having a shop window to the world. where people are walking past every day and they're saying, is that person interesting or not? So one of our clients, which is a company called Namos, they're an Oracle reseller. They've got about 100 people. One of their salespeople, we train them. One of their salespeople was did what we told them to do. A client was on LinkedIn looking for a solution to their business problem. They thought that salesperson looks interesting. They walked towards that salesperson. They said, "I think you can help me." There was then a conversation that took place between the salesperson and that buyer. Same conversation that's been going on for years, and that turned into a $2.6 million deal. They've taken another $500,000 out of that company. So this is where organizations are presenting themselves on social. People are presenting themselves on social. Conversations are taking place, and that's leading to commercial interaction. Now, if you're not doing it, it means you're leaving money on the table, straight and foremost. What we did with the second book, the second edition, is that so Matt decided to not be involved in this book, so the second edition is just me. And what I've done is I've written 30% more. So I've updated all of the content from the version 1. So it's now equivalent to the world as of 2022 rather than 2015 and 2016. I've written 30% more. I've also gone out to 15 practitioners, people that are using social selling and social strategically, and asked them to contribute. The first edition was very much of, I'm sitting in a bubble, nobody's doing this. Now here we are in 2022, there's lots of people doing it, so let's put in the case studies. So I've got forward from Mark Schaefer, I've got contributions from clients such as Cyberhawk. So the CEO from Cyberhawk, he talks about how we've helped him build a digital organization. I've got quotes from Telstra, RingCentral, Namos that I mentioned earlier on. I've got Daniel Guzman from Mercer to contribute about employee advocacy. Nita Vaseli from Ericsson, who runs the digital business program there. She's talking about their digital program. Plus, I've got Robert Turl, who's a headhunter. They've all made contributions as well. So what we're doing is that we're making the book far more practical in the way that it works. Does that give you an idea in terms of
completely.
The first edition and the second edition?
So let's talk about the 5 pillars of selling, and because I think it's something that you highlighted, and I would like to touch this because I think the challenge right now, and I think for people, I think I would suggest everyone to go to the book. We put the links to the group, to the book, to the website, to Amazon, and so forth. And I think this is key. I would say for startups, for SMEs, for business, whatever you are in blockchain, AI, you need to understand and change your mind. Actually, I will oblige everyone in my team to listen to this interview because I think they all need to learn. And I think this is a key element. But how do you get into this? Because like you said, you are an introvert person and you created a very strong global business and precisely focus on these areas. And this is a big challenge because one of the things you mentioned in your book is the idea of the creation of the community and the trust. And this is actually, for me, the most important thing is how you build these relationships, how you listen. Listen is key. So I would like to go right now from the theory. Of course, we don't want to give away too much of the book. I think please buy it. That's the idea. We are here with an author, but just to understand how we can actually get into this.
Yeah, community quite often is seen as some sort of fluffy marketing thing, but actually it's a critical thing for sales and leadership to be involved in. One of the things that we ask people nowadays, business leaders, is who is the leading technical, commercial, digital influencer in your market or vertical? Now, if you think about it, in the days that went by, certainly in my life, there was a magazine, a trade magazine, usually of a particular vertical. And what we did was that would arrive every month and we'd go through it. And if we got an article in it, we'd be really happy. And if the competition got an article in it, we'd be annoyed and we'd have a really bad day because we'd think that the competition were ahead of us. What you're able to do now on digital is actually create that for yourself. So if you think about the world of B2C, B2C has had influencers and creators now for a long, long time. And there's the discussion that you get on the news and on media will be usually about B2C type influencers, the Kardashians as an example. But we're actually able to do that within the B2B world. We're actually able to define the marketplace. You know, if we want to be the leaders in the metaverse in oil and gas, we can set up a podcast and we can do that. We can. One of my partners, Eric Doyle, he works with a company called OGV Energy. So that's Oscar Golf Victor Energy. And they've done what I've said. They've created a magazine. They have a monthly session, which they run as a LinkedIn Live, which they then restream out. And they get people in from the industry, you know, people that have won awards, people that have won deals, and they get them to come in and actually discuss it. And what they're doing is that they're creating this anchor in the marketplace around the particular marketplace that they want it to be known for. And so what we're finding is that then that brings in community. So last time I looked, they had a session last week. A LinkedIn Live, they had 125 people that's saying that they were attending. Now, I know that 125 people in the scheme of Kim Kardashian's following isn't not a lot of people, but in the B2B world and in oil and gas, that's a lot of people. And if you think about all those people going out and talking to people, now community isn't about what we saw one organization that should know better go on and do a LinkedIn Live, and the whole thing was scripted. And they were being killed in the comments because everybody was saying, this is just a sales pitch. You're just reading off a script. I mean, they've found the most beautiful people in the world to act on this thing. But the fact of the matter is they were just reading off a piece of paper. And that's not what people want in this world. They want people to be authentic. They want, you know, I'm not reading this off a script, so you're hearing the real Tim Hughes. If you don't like Tim Hughes, that's great, because if you don't like what I'm saying, that's brilliant, because you're not going to talk to me. Therefore, I don't have to bother with people that are never going to buy from me. But if you think about what I'm saying and you think, actually, I think Tim has something, and I think that it's something worth investigating, then you'll come and probably check me out, and we may have a conversation. But what we're able to do with community is that we're able to actually build something. We're able to build. People can start knowing, liking, and trusting you. And what you're able to do is build this, in effect, build this digital influence in your marketplace. And you are defining the marketplace in which you work in, and your competition isn't. And what you gradually do is you just take the oxygen out of everything that's going on within the marketplace in the digital platform like LinkedIn. So one of the things that we've worked with Cyberhawk, for example, is digital dominance. This is a way of, in the old days, what you did, you had a PR team and they sent out press releases and you hoped that somehow a journalist would pick them up. What we're now doing is actually keeping all of the digital conversations, and we're pushing everything away. The best way to describe it is a bit like you're at a conference and there's a drinks dinner in the evening and you've been on a couple of calls, so you're late, and you arrive and you see that everybody's standing there with a glass of Prosecco or champagne or something, and they're all talking to somebody and they're all laughing and joking, and you can see them all out there as you walk into the room. And what you then suddenly realize as you're walking into the room, all of the people there are all your prospects and your customers. Now, they're all talking to somebody. Now, you've got two choices in the digital world. They're either talking to somebody from your organization or they're talking to your competition. And what digital dominance does is it means that when you walk out into that room, you know that your customers and your prospects are talking to your people, your employees, not your competition. And that's something that's what community can do and drive for you from a business perspective.
Yeah, it's really these kind of things that are critical to make a business. And I would say, with everything happening on the social media and the interactions, the B2B part of business and the B2C, actually, they're merging in a lot of ways, are going to be increasing more necessary, and as well more difficult. So let's look at so from this part of the strategy that you just described and the setup, how we do that with LinkedIn. Because one of the challenges I find, especially with my team and people around me, is that everyone has kind of an opinion, but when it comes to the details, everyone gets really lazy to do anything. And there's even another worst case scenario. First, I had a case study with myself, I'm not mentioning names, that I remember when social media became mainstream, and this was a couple of years ago, actually a long time ago, actually 10 years more, 15. I remember people that were actually behind digital teams that had no clue in terms of using the tools. So that's another challenge that we have as well, is that people that are leading sales in big corporations, they don't know how to use LinkedIn. They don't know how to use Twitter. Twitter, actually, almost no one knows how to use it, which is kind of ironic, being actually one of the biggest real-time sales tools in the world.
It is.
So how do you look at this from the theory to the practice, especially because you're dealing with people that are normally decision makers are 40, 50, 60s, sometimes even more. And these B2B people are people that have to do. And for instance, we have examples like Bill Gates, which is fantastic in social media. And he has a team of over 100 people working on that, or Ray Dalio, which is another fantastic thought leader that is, of course, behind, well, two of the biggest and wealthiest guys in the world that actually take social media very, very careful and in a very good way. But then we have, of course, a lot of disasters. So I would like to see how you put this bridge, because I think for people listening to us, a key.
So what we've done here at DLA Ignite is that we've actually created a methodology. So we've created a process that people can follow. Now, I totally agree with you that with social media, there's you got to remember that knowing and doing are two different things. So you can know, I can tell you here on social. I'm going to tell you today about the 3 things that you can do on social media, but there's a difference between knowing it and doing it. And so we've created a methodology. Part of it is outlined in the book. I certainly hint at it in the book. But what we've done is that we've transformed, and this is what we do as a company, is that we transform organizations to use this. Now, you can use it with other methodologies, as in it fits with, Holden or any of the other sales methodologies out there. But what it does is it gives you a digital process to follow. And some of it's based on psychology, some of it's based on, I was going to say common sense, but sometimes that's we found sometimes that common sense isn't necessarily common and sense. But it's based on a process that you can follow, and that's what we teach people.
And this process, I don't want to go too much away, and that's part of the consultancy work that you do on different things. But so very top level for people listening to us. And I know just for people listening, we'll put the links. For instance, Tim has a huge amount of resources on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter. There's a lot of things you can find just looking at the handles of Tim and social media, especially on LinkedIn and the YouTube. There's fantastic content, but practical stuff. So how really, let's say I'm a startup in London. I'm not talking about big corporation. I'm a startup. I'm starting. How do I start this? Because I think this is kind of the level that I'm seeing is the entrepreneurship. First of all, there's a big challenge being an entrepreneur. And I feel that this is actually becoming more difficult because everyone wants to work 9 to 6 or 9 to 5. And there's very few people that really understand that this is not 9 to 5. So, but how do you see these things and how you actually get this? Because it's not just being an entrepreneur like me or you. It's as well being in a corporation and being able to do sales. Because if your company is not performing, you have a problem. I would like to hear more on these details, let's say, from a practical perspective, from a personal as well.
So the way that we've marketed in the past is always been based on interruption. So cold calling, email, advertising is all based on interruption. So I interrupt you, and then what I do is I pitch. And that's, I cold call you and then I pitch. I send you an email, which is my pitch. I send an advert, which is a pitch. All of those things are based on interruption. That doesn't work anymore. So, the latest figures show that email marketing has a 98% failure rate. Cold calling generally has about a 99% failure rate. I don't look at adverts. I don't know if you do, but Oracle says that most people get impacted by at least 10,000 brands a day. So you can have the best copy, you can have supermodels being photographed in the Atlas Mountains, but you are one of 10,000 adverts. And so what makes you any different? Nothing. Well, I'm going to tell you what will make a difference. So there's three things that you can do. The first and foremost thing is you have what we call a buyer-centric profile. So this is what I talked about earlier on, that your social media profile is a shop window to the world. And you've got 850 million people walking past it every day on LinkedIn. And what are they doing? Are they going, is that person boring? Is that person intriguing? And there's various things that you can do to get people to go, that person looks interesting. First and foremost, it shouldn't be about your company. It shouldn't be about your products. You know, the thing that we all do when before this podcast started, we all came on and said, so where are you? Well, I'm in Spain. Oh, southern Spain. Yeah, it's near Gibraltar. Where are you? I'm in, I live near London. I said, okay, right. And what we do is that we find commonality. All of us try and find commonality. It's the way that we build, we start knowing, liking, and trusting people. So what you do is that the more that you can talk about yourself and who you are on your profile, the better that you'll find a response. So, for example, Chris Fleming, who is the CEO of Cyberhawk, he tells the story of the fact that he was thrown out of school. Now, if you understand Chris, what that means is you know that Chris he runs a startup, and you know he is a great believer in people, but it's his experiences that makes him the person that he is. And you know, if you're a marathon runner or you're this is what binds us to people. People buy people, and people will walk towards you if they can see who you are. The second thing you need is a wide and as varied network as you can get. Part of the reason is the way that the search works on LinkedIn. It's different from Google. But the more people that you're connected to, the more people that you're influencing. Influencing is saying, oh, I'm always seeing Tim Hughes' content. He seems like a great guy. And what you do is you build out a wide and as varied network. This is about building connections in the customers or the prospects that you want to have. Not one contact, but 10 or, I've got a partner who was one particular target account. They've got 1,000 connections. They're connected to the whole of the C-suite in the US and the C-suite in the UK. If someone connects to, when you try and connect to anybody in that company, they'll see, look, I'm connected to all of the people. He must be a great person. And each time you connect to somebody on LinkedIn, that's your opportunity to have a conversation, not to spam somebody, not to come up to them and pitch them, which is the same as interruption marketing. This is about being social. It's about being at a networking event. You go up to somebody and say, hi, how you doing? Where'd you come from? Well, I'm actually from Spain. I did spend some time in London. Or, I quite often spend all my time in London. Well, where'd you go? And what we do is that we're social animals. And so LinkedIn allows you to do about 200 connection requests a week. That's 200 conversations. That's a massive opportunity for you to grow your business. The third thing that you need is content. And the reason why you need content is that we know buyers are coming to social media and looking for content. Now, you can share a Harvard Business Review article. That's fine. And what you need to do is you write something, I read this article and it really inspired me because there was these 5 points made. That's fine. But that Harvard Business Review article will be shared probably about 10,000 times on LinkedIn. It's not necessarily giving you something particularly unique. But if you actually create content yourself, what you're doing is that you're drilling into your own authentic self. And part of the program that we run is that we teach people how to actually create content, actually write. So what people are doing is that they're coming online, they're looking for the answers to their business problems, and they're finding it in your content. They're seeing that you're the expert. They're seeing that you're the person that they can turn to that can actually help them. So great example is the most visible thing about you on the internet is your LinkedIn title. If you Google your name, Google yourself, probably you will be unless you have your own website, LinkedIn will be the first thing that it will show. It will show three things. One, your photo, your name, and your summary title. The summary title is the most visible thing about you on the internet. Your job is to get someone to go, that's interesting. I'm going to actually follow that up. most people think that what you need to do is write about what your job title is or what you're about. It's not, because actually people won't connect to you. So my summary title is should have played Quidditch for England. And the reason why I do that is people go, what on earth is that? I need to look at this guy's LinkedIn profile. Because I have the professional edition of LinkedIn, I know someone's looked at my LinkedIn profile. I've immediately means that I can have a conversation with them, start a conversation with them. So I know anybody that's Googled me at any point and is likely to come to my LinkedIn profile, and I will have a conversation with them. And the thing is that that's just one of the simple things that everybody can be doing to help them sell. You don't need to be a salesperson to do that. You don't need to be working for a big company or a small company. You can be an entrepreneur just working in Shoreditch in London just by yourself. These are the things that you can do to actually make a big transformational change. Because what you're doing is that you're using social media as a way of generating leads and meetings and revenue, and you're also using psychology as a way of getting people to kind of do what you want. Most of the summary title stuff is covered in the social selling second edition book. So it's quite a lot there to get through. Sorry, but I thought
No. This is if you want to achieve something, you have to prepare yourself, and I think this is kind of one of the most important things. I thank you very much for that, and I think people looking, like I said, go to the website, Social Techniques, and as well the book. I think it's the most important thing, but as well the website DLA Ignite. There's a lot of things that actually explain what you're talking about. So I want to talk a bit about DLA Ignite. So let's say that you've been working with massive brands, or so you have from BMW to well, some of the biggest brands in the world, to say less. So what you've been, let's say, if you look at the challenge that we're facing right now in terms of the digital transformation of businesses, what would be the helicopter view, the top things that really, well, we touched most of these things, but I want to go through organizations and society, because it's a big challenge in society. For instance, you are a guest lecturer, and you lecture as well in Rutgers, which is one of the top universities in the world. But I've been as well a guest lecturer in leading universities, and a challenge I have is that most of my students, ironically, they spend probably 10 hours in social media, but they are not digital. They don't understand the tools, they don't understand this. And the universities have no clue about this, have no education about this. It's a big challenge. And for me, it's the biggest, because we spend all the time on this, but we don't understand how to make money out of this. And this is a big problem as well for the creative economy. I know that is something dear to you. So how can we tackle this right now in a more society level?
I think that, I mean, as I said earlier on, what we do here at DLA Ignite is that we empower people to use digital and be digital. And I agree with you that I think that I can look across LinkedIn and I can see which organizations are digital and which are not. When you look at quite big organizations, thought leadership organizations like McKinsey or IBM, I can see that they're not digital. I can see that they're not used to walking digital corridors and having digital conversations. You can just see that from the profiles of the people. They may be nicely arranged on websites and saying, here are our experts, but they don't know how to talk on digital platforms. And this is a major issue for businesses and society today. A lot of digital transformation has been based around IT systems. We've replaced accounting systems or ERP systems and said that we're digital, but we're not, because the people in the process are not digital. And what we're not looking at is human-centric ways of working and using that as a way of being digital. I think it's something that certainly the more that leadership teams understand that, the more they're likely to invest it, and the more they're likely to invest in the tools and the training to get their people digital in their organization.
So it's about having these tools and taking it really serious. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of
it's about being human-centric. It's about the only way your business is going to be digital is by having the people that are being digital. And understanding all the different aspects of that, and using digital as a way of changing processes. Take for example, display technology. They're a company in Cambridge that we've been working with. They're not for their salespeople, they're not going out and using headhunters, and they're not using advertising. The reason for that is that they use social. And they don't need to use those things, because what happens is when you're social is that people go, do you know, that looks like a really great company to come and work for. I'll give them a call. Or, oh, they've got a job ad, I'll reply to that. And what you're doing is that you're using the tools of digital and social in a different way to actually transform what you were doing before. So the fact they're not spending money on advertising and they're not spending money on headhunters is a massive saving. So one of the things that we're seeing is that from using digital and social is there's this long-term ability to strip out cost and to make yourself more efficient. So, you know, way back in the 90s, when people were doing something at the time, you didn't hear anything but about Y2K. You never hear about it anymore. So what we had to do was had to change the computers to get through the year 2000. There was a lot of people that went through what was called BPR, which is business process re-engineering. And what we're seeing now is that people are doing that exactly the same, but using digital and social and human-centric digital as a way of doing that. So back to my book, Chris Fleming, the CEO from Cyborg, he talks about how they run a digital organization. He now sees that he's both a drones company, but it's also a media company, because they have to think they're creating the content that they need to make sure that goes out on social media. And so people are given time to actually create that, because they know it's so critical for the business. And they've grown so much. I mean, they're being told that they're going to IPO faster and at a higher rate because of the fact that they're using digital in this way. The VCs that they've got at the moment are saying, how are you doing all this stuff? We actually originally went in there and they said, we said to them, if how many leads a week would make this work? They said 5. So when we got to 15, we stopped counting. And they've got into so many accounts big accounts. You know, if you think about oil and gas, they do drones on pylons and oil rigs and stuff like that. If you think about the companies that run those, they are massive. Don't just get in those with like a cold call or an email or something. You've got to build relationships across the organization. And they've got into some organizations that normally are just closed shops, and they've done that through social. And it is it's just transformational in the way it's worked.
Yeah, and so let me ask one thing, and I know that I'm passing 1 hour, but I still want 1 or 2 more questions, if it's okay for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned listening and
yes,
getting the leads, but as well closing the leads.
yes.
So on selling and social selling, one thing is to get the lead, which is a massive task, but the most difficult is how you close, how you take it to the next level. So can you just give us a bit of an overview? Because this is one of the things that I think people are struggling, and they're struggling to understand how to take it forward, how to work this direction, and how to improve these different things. Okay. So any notes that you want to highlight on that direction?
Yeah, I think that you know, everybody needs to understand the mechanics of using social. This is not about using a tool, it's about how it works. So what I talked about is the walking the digital corridors and having the digital conversations. Excuse me. Part of that is listening. You know, listening to what's going on, listening to what's going on within your prospects, listening to what's going on with your competition, and then making sure that you start having conversations and being comfortable having those conversations. Now, I totally understand that the person that you're, as you build out relationships across a particular account, you may find somebody isn't on LinkedIn or isn't active on LinkedIn, but you may find them on Instagram posting pictures of their dogs taking them for a walk in Bushy Park in London. Now, this is what I'm talking about is this is not about learning how to use LinkedIn. It's not learning about Instagram. It's learning about how to be social and how to move from one platform to the other and understand what it means to be social, which is different from knowing how to use Sales Navigator or something like that. And then the process is about having a conversation, just as I talked about earlier on, a conversation like we're having here, like you would have at a networking event. You know, where have you come from? How far have you traveled? Oh, you're in London. Oh yeah, I was in London 2 years ago, and I went to see this. Is that still there? And just having that conversation, at which point you turn that to one about something to do with what you know. So what do you do? Oh, you're in. Oh, that's interesting. You know, how are you finding it right now? Is you know, for example, at BMW, they've been hit hard because a lot of the Mini was manufactured in Ukraine. So you can imagine, you know, people were buying Minis and they said, well, you're not going to get one for 12 months. I don't know what they're doing now. I haven't spoken to the people at BMW for a long time, but you know, it's having that natural curiosity and starting those natural conversations. And what you'll find is that what you'll find is, so I was on a conversation, I had a Zoom call with somebody the other day, senior leader in one of the UK newspapers, and he said, I don't believe this works. And I said, so how do you think you got on this call? And he went, oh. I said, yeah, I targeted your company. You're here because this is what works. And I said, you've actually, and then, you know, what you can, you turn around the conversation. And I said, you've actually asked me to pitch at you. So you know, and it was like, he had an aha moment where he went, oh, I get it now. And then really the closing process is no different from the closing process that you would normally take somebody through. The difference being that what you're able to do is use the skills that you've now got, that we've now taught you about your profile, about your network, about content. You're using that as a way, as levers to do things. So for example, we generally are able to shorten the sales cycle by about 20–30%. And the reason why that we're able to do that is that if you've got a particular, say you've got a particular deal, they're ghosting you, and you can't get hold of the people, what would you normally do? You'd phone them up, you'd send them emails, you'd annoy them to the point where they'd say, go away, I don't want to deal with you. Let's turn it on its head. Let's take the business issue that that client has got. Let's write an article about it. Let's write an article about the business case for that, and then send it to the person that's ghosting you. So I've just written this. Would really love your comment on it. It's a different way of working. This is a way of working with senior people in organizations. Yeah, and this is. What they'll do is that they see you then as a business person yourself. They don't see you as someone that's going to come and try and sell you something and disappear. They see you as a partner, as a friend, as an expert. Now, this isn't, none of this stuff is difficult. It's just about applying it and using it. So for example, we were trying to, we heard that there was a particular PE, so private equity company, that was having problems because of COVID. They weren't going to get the buyout in the time frame that they wanted, so they needed to get international and grow internationally. So they need to go into new markets to do that. So we wrote an article about how to go into new markets. Within 10 minutes, the particular person from the PE company, because of course we'd connected to the person already, they'd seen that we were nice people because of our profile. Within 10 minutes, they phoned us up and said, senior article, can you come and talk to us? And this is what we're doing. We're using those three things of our profile on our network and content as a way to help us get new business, but also speed things up through the pipeline and also help us close. So while we're still using the standard sales techniques, I'm not taking anything away from salespeople that they've used for the last 5, 10, 15 years. What we're doing is we're adding to it and supplementing it, but giving them digital skills to enable them to get the sales and use the sales processes that they now need to do in digital. Does that make sense?
Now, there's this wonderful inspiration, and I think for people listening to us, even for me, I think these details is the devil's on details. That's what I always say to my teams, and even what you're doing in these things. And I think it's really important, but as well is about the respect that you build, because business is about building relationships of respect. And I think this part, the way you put it, you are creating value. And when you create value, then you can close the deal in a much better way. So I think we passed 1 hour, so I want to keep this with all the respect. I have a lot of questions special on this, and definitely this is the first, probably, I want to do a podcast just about sales and digital sales. So for as a wrap up, and of course we spoke about your book, and we're going to highlight it in the interviews, so people listening to us in the future or in these moments when you're listening, there will be all the links here on whatever channel you're using, both YouTube and podcasts, and as well even on our websites. But Tim, tell us a bit about where people can find you, how they can engage with you. Is all this interest coming from your own, and as well, how would be the best approach to you? Because, for instance, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, I want to work with you in a lot of ways. And in my case, okay, how am I going to approach you? So I'm sure there's a lot of things that we have to work, because sales, if you're not focused on sales, you have a problem. So that's what I say everyone that I work with.
And it's interesting what you said. I'll come to that in a moment, but it's interesting what you said earlier on about getting everybody in the organization to sell. In effect, if what you're not doing is saying to people, you need to sell. If you've got a good profile, if they're building networks and they're sharing content, they're going to be sharing content about what a great place it is to work, about your great diversity program, about the fact that you're inclusive, the fact that you've got an ESG program, that, hey, all of these things are the things that actually people will go, that looks like a great place to buy from. That looks like a great place to work. That looks like a great place to invest. And what we're doing is that we're reaching out. You know, the modern job hunter is the same as the modern buyer, and the same as the modern investor. They're all looking and searching on the same way, and they're looking for the same things. So about me, the best place probably to find me is LinkedIn. I'm Timothy, or either Tim Hughes. So that's TIMOTHY, and Hughes is HUGHES. If you do send me a connection request, please send me a note to say that you saw me on this podcast. Because I get all kinds of people sending me connection requests. And it's usually they just send me it doesn't come across who they are. You'll be able to find me. You should be able to find me on there. Our website's DLAignite.com. I'm Timothy_Hughes on Twitter. And I'd love to meet people and hear what they think, and get their feedback, and I love meeting people. I have a curiosity for meeting people.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. It's really been very inspiring, and I really recommend for you to look at the book, and as well buy it, get into this. And I would say anyone, like you said, this touches governments, touches organizations, but especially I would say that allow us to have a completely different ballgame in terms of when it comes to the way we building value, but as well we are scaling this value. And I think we didn't touch about metaverse sales and all the different things, which I think is more futuristic, but is as well very present, because things are happening. Look at Roblox and all these different things. But I think we'll be for the next one. So thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure really to have you here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for setting this up. I really appreciate it. And just to remind everybody that Social Selling Techniques for Influence Buyers and Changemakers 2nd edition is available on Amazon worldwide.
Yes, we will put all the links, and we will be promoting this, because I think it's a great book. I'm actually, for me, it's a very inspiring book as well, for me as a CEO, but I think for everyone listening to us. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you so much. Thank you.